assistant said he would be on.
Awesome.
Yes.
And should we act like we are actually a different podcast? Just because it's fun to do.
Oh, God. That would be really funny.
Super gay foodies. Super gay foodies in the house. Cue the music.
Yeah. Yes.
It's all key lime pie and key lime pie.
This is the Will and Grace recap podcast.
Yes. Now you lived in New York, right? Wow.
Did you know the friends?
What was that like? I've never been myself.
Welcome back to Native Tongues, your favorite podcast of all time. I hope you enjoyed the quick look behind the scenes of us getting just about as professional as we can possibly be. I'm your host, Aaron Palmer, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and good friend, Ken Hall. If you like what you're listening to, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, check us out on Spotify, or check out our Instagram page, @NativeTonguesPod, for plenty more content. If you want to be a friend, one of the best things you can do is share this episode with someone you like. It helps to spread the word and keep this podcast alive. Now, on to our guest this week. We've got a prolific and very popular writer who just happens to be in the young adult space. He's most well known for his best-selling Scythe series. He's also the author of the Unwind series, as well as the Noah Files trilogy, and a number of others such as Game Changer, Dry, Bruiser, Challenger Deep, a number of short stories, plenty of novels, graphic novels. He's written screenplays, and as we found out, even some games. While this entire episode was a lot of fun, we did get a story toward the end, which might be the wildest and most jaw-dropping story we've received thus far. So, in case you need to jump ahead, check out around the 1 hour mark. Now, let's welcome to the pod, best-selling author and extensive world traveler, Neal Shusterman. You look very crisp.
Glad to hear it.
You've been working on that? Do you use a new moisturizer?
That's my goal, to look crisp.
Excellent.
I'm always jealous of Aaron's camera. Always looks great.
I just got a new computer last week, so I guess it's
there you
much better than the blurry camera that I had on my other computer.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
it pops.
I blame my camera too. My camera's very old. That's why, this is as good as it gets. Where are you currently?
Where am I? I am in my home in Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was just down in Florida last week, actually. I was in Vero Beach for a few days.
Nice place.
It was. It was pretty quiet. Just a friend and I got away, and I don't know why he picked this place. We were convinced that the whole island was owned by probably a bunch of like finance guys that have rented out spaces for their wives to own boutiques.
And not sell anything, just...
Exactly. Because they're all selling the same thing right next to each other.
That's what I said. By the time you get through all the boutiques, you're like, well, I'll just add mine to the end of the row right here. And figure out how I can sell shoes and Christmas ornaments at the same time.
Yeah, pretty much. So you always from Jacksonville?
No, I moved here shortly before the pandemic because my daughter was going to SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I figured
Awesome.
Move from California, be closer to her, be in a state for a while that had no state taxes. And then COVID hit, and then, I was stuck here. Her school got canceled, so she moved in with me for a year and a half.
Okay.
And now she's moved back to California, but I'm still here.
Oh, man. That's funny. Did she end up graduating from SCAD or going back through there? Okay. Awesome. Very cool. Love Savannah.
Yeah, I had a couple friends who went there. It is a nice place. What was she studying to do there?
Illustration and sequential art, which she's still working at getting that going. It's a hard time for artists now.
What is sequential art?
That's like graphic novels, storyboarding, that type of thing.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know what the pathway into that would be. I mean, I assume it's just
neither does anybody. That's the problem.
If only your father was a novelist, maybe they could use.
Well, we are working on a graphic novel together.
There we go.
Oh, nice.
I thought it was the art of putting things in order. Terrible.
Yeah. So, Neal, this is one of the few times in my life so far that I've looked cool to my kids. My son is a voracious reader. He's just about to turn 10, but he goes through like 2 books a week, and he read your Scythe series and a couple others too. I'm trying to
Unwind. That was my other big series.
Yeah, I think he's reading that right now, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But he was wild about it, and I said, I'm going to be talking to him, and he was like, "Oh, what?" I was like, "That's so cool." And then I was talking to Ken about some of your books too. And when I was dropping him off at school this morning, I mentioned it, and I was like, "Do you have any questions? Like anything you want to know?" I was like, "Ken said he read this book called Game Changer," and he's like, "That one was great. I read that." I was like, "When did you even get these by me?" Like, I don't know.
That's one that doesn't get as much attention as some of the others because it came out during the pandemic, and books that came out during the pandemic didn't do as well as books that were published like before. It's like the Scythe books did really well during the pandemic, but stuff that was new that came out during that time, it was hard to get traction on those. So it's really great when people start talking about Game Changer, because that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I was telling Aaron about it. I was like, it goes a lot of places. It checks a lot of boxes there.
I was trying to get a gauge on whether my son understood all of it. Like all of the segregation stuff.
Right.
I mean, I think he breezed through it and he understood it, but I don't think he understood like the bigger picture.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the type of thing that when you come back to it, or when you look back to it a few years later, you realize what was there.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people will read my books again years later and get more out of it, which is kind of the point. I mean, I'm not just writing books for kids, I'm writing books for adults as well. And so I want everybody to be able to appreciate it at the level that they approach it at.
I mean, to be fair, my son is kind of past reading books for kids. He's moving quick. Mm-hmm. And I was like a little worried about that at one point. I was like, what's the content? And then I talk to Ken about this all the time. Like, we grew up, I think I was reading like Stephen King and Michael Crichton his age. So I'm like, that turned out okay. He'll be fine.
That's still up for debate.
As long as he's reading.
I feel like though, it's great when you can write at a level and make it accessible to like a younger generation, but then also have that undercurrent where it's clear. Was that always something that you strive to do?
It is. I mean, I want to entertain myself. I want to write stories that intellectually make me want to read them. I want to write the stories that I'd want to read. And I also want to make them accessible to younger readers as well. So I sort of build all that in. I sort of say, okay, so some readers are just going to come in for the action and for all of that. But then there's going to be the little readers that are more in for the philosophical aspects of it, and then the societal aspects. So it's all in there. Yeah. It's just a matter of what you take from it when you read it.
Yeah.
Would you call most of your work young adult, or is it just general? Are you aiming for that?
I have an issue with genre in general. I hate labeling things.
Sure.
Because I hate when people would come to me and say, "Oh, you write for young adults." Well, when are you going to write a real book? People has judgments on things.
The 700-page books weren't good enough.
Yeah.
Right.
So I write for just the large audience. It is considered young adult. It's marketed as young adult. And I once asked my publisher, "Can we like do some adult?" And he said, "Why?"
Yeah.
The books are doing so well marketed as young adult. If you when you publish an adult books, they'll peak and then they'll disappear. But young adult books, they just keep building. I mean, Scythe is selling more copies every year since it's been published.
No kidding.
That's awesome.
Because those kids are all coming of age, and the schools are bringing them to the kids, and so it has a much longer life. So I'm happy being marketed as young adult.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking to a writer, and he was saying like when he has ideas, he will meet with the publisher first and be like, "All right, here are 5 ideas," and they'll tell him, "Hey, go kind of down this road." And his thing was that as you start to build your audience, there is that trust level. So they know, all right, when I see this is what I'm going to get. And like, while it seems great to be like, I have no boundaries, in reality, there is sort of that trust level that you want to establish.
But on the other hand, I'm best known for breaking my own rules. So I'm always trying to do something that I haven't done before in a different genre than I've done before, which has both served me and hindered, because if you go to the bookstore, sometimes the books are on different shelves if they organize them by genre. But at the same time, it's made me a better writer because I've explored different kinds of writing. I'm not writing the same thing over and over again. So I'm pushing my own comfort zone. Yeah. And I think that makes for, a learning experience as a writer.
So when you're coming up with a new concept and you want to break your own rules and move into a different genre, what's driving that? Are you picking a genre that just you haven't done before, or have you recently read or seen something that you love and want to go down that road? Like, what's influencing you?
Usually it's something that I look at and I say, can I do this? How can I do this? This feels like it's beyond me. Yeah. And as soon as it feels beyond me, that's when I want to tackle it. I'm a little bit of a masochist when it comes to being at the things that I choose. It's like Courage to Dream, a graphic novel about the Holocaust told through fantasy stories. How the hell am I going to pull that off?
Whose idea was this again?
What am I going to do? And as soon as I got that idea, and as soon as I realized this is going to be really tricky, I got really excited about writing it. So the trick was to be able to be respectful and relevant and resonant, and at the same time introduce those elements of fantasy into a subject that you would not normally think of when you think of fantasy.
Sure.
And figuring out how to make that work was quite a challenge. And then it was chosen as a Sidney Taylor Honor Book, which is one of the greatest things that you can get for a book that is a Jewish themed book. Okay. And so it was validation of the work that
success,
I put into.
Sure.
Are you Jewish?
Yes.
Me too. You're good company.
When you're doing graphic novels, do you work with the artist as well, or are you writing kind of like, here's what I'm picturing and all that?
Well, when I started it, there was no, and I don't even know if there is a strict form. It's not like a screenplay where you have Sid Field's screenplay. You know exactly how you're supposed to write it.
Yeah.
There was no form, standard format for writing a graphic novel. So I kind of took stage play and sort of crossed it with screenplay, and then created a page. This page has 5 frames, and frame 1 is this and that, and the artist said that it was structured in such a way that it really helped him. So that's going to be, if I do more graphic novels, I'll use that structure. But it was first working by myself for about 4 years, developing the graphic novel just in text, and then it came to find the artist. Now, originally I had an artist who was well known for Jewish themed art, whose work I loved, but the publisher didn't feel that it was commercial enough for a graphic novel. His was much more of a fine art style. Okay. And so I told them, well, if we're not going to use him, then we're going to find an artist that I like as much. And It took 5 years to find the artist.
Oh, wow.
Was that an active search?
Some of them could do the fantasy, but they couldn't handle reality. Some of them could catch gritty reality, but the fantasy looked cheesy. And then we saw Andres Vera Martinez's work, and his work was just right on target. And then he did some samples. He picked some of the scenes, and they were just phenomenal. And we knew we found our artist.
How'd you find him?
I was through the publisher. The publisher brought him in.
Oh, okay.
And then he started doing the work, and then we would go back and forth, so looking at what he did, and they say, oh, well, I can change what I've written here because you've shown it, so I don't have to say it. And so there's that back and forth between the two of us. And then the first time we met in person, was when we went on tour together and to speak at schools. We had never met each other until the first school we spoke at together.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like that process would be so much fun once you lock in on that and they're kind of working through that. It's almost like making a movie, but you get to like do it all kind of in one encapsulation there. It's not like, all right, and when this is done, we'll send it out and now it'll go someplace else and you won't see it.
Yeah, it was a fun process. It was a long process, but it was definitely well worth it.
Nice. So you're originally from California?
Originally, correct? I'm from New York.
Oh, I can kind of hear that.
So I was born and raised in New York till I was 16. And my father came home one day, and he was an engineer. His company transferred him to Mexico. So I spent my junior and senior years of high school in Mexico City.
How was that? That's an adjustment.
And then from there, I went off to California. And that's so I went to college at UC Irvine and spent most of my adult life there until moving to Florida.
Okay.
So how was the move to Mexico received?
Oh, it was devastating.
God, I can't imagine.
Well, it's a careful what you wish for thing because, wherever you grow up, you don't want to be there.
It's true.
So I grew up in Brooklyn, and my parents would ask me what I want for my birthday, and I would tell them in this strong Brooklyn accent, I want to go to California. I want to move to California. That's what I want to do.
And be a writer. I'm sure that went over well in a Jewish household.
So my father comes home and says, we're moving. And I say, oh, is it California? No, it's Mexico. So
yeah.
But it was really, I didn't speak Spanish. I took French in middle school and my first 2 years of high school. So I was stuck.
Good foresight.
But after overcoming the culture shock, it became 2 of the best years of my life.
Yeah.
Having an international experience really changes you. It opens you to the world. You're not afraid of anything. You feel like a citizen of the world rather than a citizen of any one place. And that has followed me, I think, all my life.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. Do you ever go back there?
Once in a while, I've had the chance to go and actually visit the school.
Yeah.
I was invited by the American School of Mexico City. Them not remembering, not knowing that I was actually a student there.
No kidding.
And then when I told them, they went and they found the old yearbooks. Like, oh yeah, he was here.
That's why we wanted you. Yes, that's why.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what it was. So was that a school for like expats or like American?
Yeah, I mean it's the American school, and most countries have American schools where it's the American curriculum, and it's for expats or for business people who have their kids. Also people who live locally who want to give their kids an American education because they want their future to be involved with America. And so it's a really a big mix. I mean, I went to school with kids of diplomats and kids of from multinational companies, and they were just such a mix of people from all over the world.
That's awesome.
It had to be like a softer landing than just being in the middle of an entirely Spanish speaking population.
Yeah, that would have been a different situation. Total immersion. Although I would have learned Spanish faster. I became semi-fluent in 2 years. They say it takes 3 full years to become fluent. One more year and I would be totally fluent.
Gotcha. That's so good though. You can use that in Florida. So
there you go.
Works.
When I've had a little bit to drink, I'm much more fluent.
Okay, there you go.
Estoy mejor.
Nice. So when did you start writing? Were you a heavy reader as a kid?
Yes and no. I mean, when I was not a good reader when I was younger. I was always below grade level. I was ADHD, which they have a name for that now. Back then, they just said, "Oh, he's hyper." That's a hyper kid.
Right.
You can't sit still.
And can't sit still. And so my third grade teacher would throw me out of the classroom, send me to the library, just to get rid of me.
What was that plan?
Well, I was not a reader though at that point, but I was constantly in the library, and then now I was the librarian's problem, and she had to quiet me down. So she always found books for me, and she was very good at finding books that would keep my attention.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. And so I became a reader. I kind of became the librarian's pet.
What hooked you?
Gosh, I can't remember. The first books that I read that I remember reading were all picture books. Just when I was that young, and I was just getting into reading. And then she would give me chapter books, and I would feel really proud that I could read books that had fewer pictures. But the ones that really hooked me were the end of third. By the end of third grade, I was reading Jules Verne.
Oh wow,
nice.
Okay. So I went from being basically picture book reader to reading Jules Verne in 1 year. And I remember reading Journey to the Center of the Earth. I think that's the first one that I really remember devouring. And literally devouring because the book itself was so badly bound. It was a badly bound paperback that when you turned the page, it came out. So that's how I read the book. It was just done. One page after another.
Done. Do you remember the librarian's name?
Yes, Judith Shapiro. And years later, I tried to find her. I went back to the school that they don't know what happened to her. They don't know where she went. But I did get the chance to speak with a lot of my other teachers. My ninth grade English teacher, who was really the one who got me writing. Years later, I took her out to lunch and gave her a copy of like 20 books and signed them all to her and say, "These are all here because of you." And it was really special.
That's a moment. God, that's great.
That's something I have to assume she doesn't get very much. Most teachers probably don't get very much,
When I speak to teachers, a lot of them say that there's every once in a while they'll have a student who'll come back who's become successful at something and attributes their success to the teacher and how that teacher has helped them. So I think every teacher gets a chance to have that. At least I hope they do because they deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. Indeed. So you spent most of your time in the library. You start reading, and then when did you actually, I don't know, pick up a pen, hit a typewriter, decide you want to try something?
I saw Jaws. And I decided I wanted to be Steven Spielberg. That's it. I'm gonna be Peter Benchley. I'm gonna be Spielberg. And so that summer, I wrote a story about the seashore town that was being attacked by giant sandworms and jellyfish, giant lops, basically Jaws with everything but a shark. And I gave it to my ninth grade English teacher. That first said ninth grade, and she sent it off into some contest. And I didn't win the contest, but I was flattered that my teacher thought that the story was good enough to even enter. And she challenged me to write a story a month for extra credit because I needed extra credit in English because I was with the ADHD. I was a student. I would always like blow over the top. I would always do much more than was necessary for every project, but nothing ever got in time. I was always like 3 days late for everything that I ever turned in.
Oh God!
And so her rule was
you're describing my life.
50% off. You lose half your grade. So I was failing English.
Oh my gosh!
And so she'd said, "Well, you know what? You write a story a month, get it in on the first Monday of the month. And if you can do that, I will give you back all of your lost points for turning in everything else late."
Okay.
And so I religiously got in a story, and by the end of ninth grade, I started to identify as a writer by then.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then, people needed things written. I was the guy to go to, so I kind of started to really just feel it at that point.
So you're writing like short stories, anything that you would be like nowadays, you're like, hey, this was actually like a solid idea here.
There was one story that I wrote when I was in 10th grade that actually I ended up publishing in one of my subsequent short story collections called The Peter Pan Solution. That was about parents who were geneticists who would, when their kids became teenagers and started to go bad, they would kill them and clone them and start them over again. And it was like this whole secret thing that they were doing.
Doesn't that sound lovely?
Yeah.
And fun.
It's kind of a little bit of a precursor to Unwind, and I didn't even realize that until thinking back years later. But that story was a story that I put in, I think it was the Mindbender short story collection, just as a comparison. And you can see it is very amateurish compared to everything else.
Still a pretty big idea. That's something heavy to attack when you're younger,
Oh, I was always attacking like stuff that was ridiculous. I was always just, so full of myself and my high ideas.
I was gonna say, how do you decide that you should write a book about a sea town getting attacked by everything but a shark and be like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. This is gonna work out great. It's like you got to have some chutzpah, I guess, going into it anyway to be like, all right, well, you don't know what you don't know, and that's awesome.
Yeah, well, when I first my first book that was published was The Shadow Club, and after it was published, the publisher came up to me and said, you realize how difficult it is to get a young adult book published, and this was when young adult was just really starting out before it became a big thing. That it's one of the hardest markets to break into, and you broke into it. Had I known that, had I not been so ignorant, I probably wouldn't have tried it. I would probably said, "Oh, this is not going to happen. It's impossible," and I would have done something else.
Right.
So it was actually my ignorance that served me there.
Were you aiming for that market, or did you just happen to fall into that?
I kind of fell into it. I mean, I was doing writing of all different kinds. I was writing a weekly humor column, which I wrote when I was in college, and that got syndicated as like this young person's humor column to various different magazines. And I was working on stage plays. I was writing screenplays. I was trying to write episodes of TV shows. I was writing movie scripts, and I was writing an adult novel, not an adult novel, but a novel for an adult audience.
Yeah.
And these stories that were based on stories that I told as a counselor at summer camp. So I would write these books just because the kids loved the stories and I could bring them the next summer, I could bring them an actual copy of the book. Mm-hmm. And so I was doing all of that stuff. And the third one is the first one that sold.
Did you go away for the summer as like a, sort of, I have friends that go to camp for.
Yeah. When I was a kid, that was it. You go to camp for the whole summer.
Yeah.
And then when you turn 17, suddenly you're the counselor and you're in charge of these kids, which is like this ridiculous concept. Suddenly you become a surrogate parent in 1 year. It's crazy.
I did the same thing. And I only learned recently that that's really a Jewish thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, most of those camps were Jewish camps.
Right.
It was Kutcher's Camp Anawana.
Okay. So did you have a agent at that time? Like, did you have any connections? How'd you break into anything?
I didn't have an agent when I started. But what I did was I got the writer's market. And the writer's market...
The book?
The book.
Yeah.
Gives the names and addresses of publishers to the publisher's horror. And my parents at that point had moved back from Mexico, were living in Manhattan. And so I would spend a few weeks with them when I was coming back from school, between school and then going to camp as the counselor. And
this is college age?
College age, yeah. And I would take these books that I written. I made Xerox copies. Took all the money that I made from the summer job, from working at the camp, to make copies of the books. And then right after getting out from camp, before going back to college, I would walk around Manhattan and I would hand carry these manuscripts to the offices of the publishers. Oh,
how did that go over?
I'm sure that was received well.
I would hand it to the doorman and they took it from there. And I knew they got them because I did get the rejection letters. I did get all those rejection letters. Okay, but I knew that they got there.
I feel like that's a badge of honor, though, too, just to be like, hey, look, I got rejected. That's great. They read it. Somebody looked at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I got an agent. By the time I got to my second book, I had an agent. She wasn't able to sell it, but the third one with a different agent sold. Now, that second agent was Andrea Brown, who was considered one of the best agents in the business now. We had a parting of the ways after the book that she couldn't sell. She was just starting. I was just starting. Yeah. It wasn't a good match. But years later, I came back to her, and she's been my agent for the past 20 years.
No way.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. How was that coming back to that relationship? Was it like, hey, you're better, I'm better, let's go?
Yeah, it was great because she was established, I was established, and it was a fantastic. It is continues to be a fantastic relationship and a fantastic friendship.
That's great. I imagine that's someone that you have to put a lot of trust into.
Yes, I mean, she positions the book. She knows which publishers to go to. She gets me better advances than I would get myself. She's very good at what she does. And she steers me. She'll say, maybe you should be working on this project instead of this project.
Yeah.
Because, for me, all over the place, everything is a shiny object, and it's hard to keep focused.
How many different projects are you generally working on, like, at a time?
I'm usually working on 3 or 4 at a time, but I'm not bouncing back and forth on a daily basis. Usually, I'll focus on a project for a few weeks or maybe a month until I start to burn out on it. And then once I'm starting to feel burned out on it, I'll flip gears and work on something else. Or if something comes up that is absolutely must be delivered, like if I'm working on a novel, I'm on the first draft of a novel, and then a rewrite comes back, and I have 3 weeks to get that rewrite out to stay on the publishing schedule. I'll shift gears and work on that. And then while I'm working on that, suddenly I'll get a call from my agent saying, we're waiting on that script. Netflix needs that script. They're waiting on you. Okay, I'll get to work on that script. And then when I'm done with that script, I'll circle back to the first project.
Sure.
So nothing is ever done in order. It's like the plate spinner at the circus, whichever plate is falling is the one that you're focusing on.
Great. But if that works for you, that's great. Talk to some writers who do that. And talk to some writers who can only focus on one thing at a time. I've never understood that.
Everybody has a different method of doing it. I can't focus on one thing at a time because I burn out on characters. I get to the point where I just want to write and they all got hit by a truck.
I hate everyone.
They're just so frustrated. So when I get to that hit by a truck moment, that's when I back away and we'll get to work on something else.
All right.
Gotcha.
So you sold your third book, and then where'd you go from there? How'd you break into everything else that you're doing? Film, graphic novels.
Well, the first book sold the same month I got my first film deal.
Oh, wow.
No kidding.
What a month.
I was working as an assistant at a talent agency in Los Angeles. They represented comics and directors and writers. And I was not a very good assistant. But they liked me. They liked me.
That's all that matters.
And so after working there for 4 months, one of the agents read something that I was writing and said, I think I can get you a film deal.
No way.
And he said, quit this job.
Yeah, you're terrible at this job.
You're terrible at it. Quit this job, and we will be your film agents. And they cooked me up with a book agent. So now I had a book agent. I had a film agent. I spent about 3 months after I left that job driving a school bus because I had to make ends meet and I needed to leave enough time to write. And that was a job that gave me that. And within those 3 months, I got the book deal and the film deal. Wow. And so from then on, I was able to support myself full time as a writer.
Good Lord. What was the film deal?
It was it's sort of one of those teen comedies back in the 80s that never got made. It was called Dirty Politics, and it was sort of like politics at an Ivy League school.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was fun to write. It was a rewrite. I mean, I got a call from the producer himself, Jerry Henshaw, and he was a big producer. I mean, he produced the Poseidon Adventure and the original and a lot of movies. And he called me. He called me at home. And he said, hey, Neal, I read your script. Lloyd sent me the script. Lloyd Sagan was the agent who was representing me. He told me he'd get me a deal. And Jerry says, I want you to do this rewrite for us of this script that we have.
Okay.
Yeah. It'll get you into the Writers Guild and it'll get you paid.
Okay. You're like,
just like that. And I said, yes, sure. And that was totally unexpected.
That's amazing.
The call that came in. And I did 2 scripts for them. Neither of them were made, but that's typical.
Is this when you're out of college now? So you're where are you at age wise at this point?
I was a year out of college, but at that point.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Young.
That's awesome. Like, again, just keep meeting people. How did you get started at the talent agency?
It all goes back to summer camp. So the last day of my last summer at that camp, I had just graduated from college. This was like the real world was upon me. And one of the kids at the camp, that I was at my cabin, his father was the booking agent for all the comedians in the Catskills.
Oh,
So
wow.
they lived in California. They were a California family, but they all came to New York, sent their kids to the camp so that the father would spend his time traveling at the Borscht Belt hotels, servicing all of his comedian clients.
Okay.
Right.
And on the last day of camp, he picked up his kid. I knew they were going back to California. And so I remember I was pacing out front nervously. Do I have the nerve to just go up to this guy who I don't even know and ask him for a job?
Yeah, you got one shot at this, kid.
Was this before or after you were handing out manuscripts around Manhattan?
Oh, this was after, but I was already doing that. That was in the summers before. But now this is the nitty gritty. This was like the real world is coming. I got to do something with my life.
Okay.
And I went up to him as they got into the car and asked him. And he said, "Well, give me your number." There were no cell phones at the time, so I guess I would have my number at my parents' place. Right. And we'll let you know if there's anything we think of. And
we'll call you.
It turns out that there was another agency in their suite that needed an assistant.
Oh my
God.
God.
So he vouched for me and I got the job. And had I not had the nerve to ask a stranger for a job as he was driving away, my life would have gone in a completely different direction.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You never know those opportunities that So I always make it a rule to never ignore an opportunity, even if it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. Always take that opportunity if it presents itself, because you never know where it's going to go.
I love that.
Yeah.
Ken and I have talked before, like in a lot of biographies that I find the most interesting of people who are just everywhere. There's a lot of luck, there's a lot of talent, but they're the ones who are always just putting themselves out there and happen to be at the right place at the right time, but like over and over again, just because they're visible.
Yeah. I mean, you have no control over the right time.
Yeah.
But you can make sure you're in the right place. And if you're in the right place, eventually the right time will come along.
Right.
Yeah.
And sitting at a desk answering phones in a talent agency was the right place. And the right time came along. So it all worked out.
That's really cool. So a couple of scripts, and then did you want to pursue that? Did you want to stick to novels?
I enjoyed dividing my time evenly between both.
Yeah.
Because the books were doing well, and books get published when they're published. When, just selling a script doesn't mean it's going to get made. It's a blueprint for a movie or a TV show that will probably never happen. But the books were getting out there. The books were actually seeing an audience. I could hold them in my hand. I could speak to people who'd read them. So I really enjoyed actually having a finished product out.
Were they as lucrative as selling scripts?
Not at first. The scripts were the moneymakers. The entertainment industry pays well. And so I was getting paid to write scripts, most of which were not getting made, but it was paying the bills. And the books were doing well, but the option on a book would be as much as I got paid to write the whole book.
Yeah.
And all the books were selling to film. They were all getting film deals. Whether they were getting made or not, that's another thing. But they were getting those film deals that would pay as much as I got paid to actually write the book.
Was that, don't take this the wrong way, but was it a function of the quality of your writing? Or did you feel like you have really good agents? I feel like a lot of people would love to have that. And we're like, everything I write seems to be get optioned. I don't know that that's common.
It's not common.
It's I consider myself lucky. I had good agents, and I had ideas that people liked. Not all of them get, not everything gets optioned. You know what the biggest thing is in the entertainment industry? Is executives leaving. Because what happens is the executive that fell in love with your project 6 months later is no longer there, and your project is orphaned because there's nobody there who's championing.
Just sitting there, right?
And that has been the case with almost everything.
Wow. Did you have high hopes going into it, or did you kind of know a little bit because you had seen a little bit of?
Oh, I had high hopes. I had those. I still had Spielberg dreams in my eyes.
Yeah, but I think it's good to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I do less film and TV now. I mean, I still get the options, but I'm doing less of the writing because the books are doing so well now that I'm focusing more on that. But I just had a conversation with my film agents last week that I want to write scripts again. I miss it. It's been a while since I've sat down and just written a script just for the sake of writing a script. And so that's probably something I'm going to do this year. I'll probably write a spec script just for fun, just for myself, and see if they can sell it.
Yeah. What genre? Like, if I know you like to challenge yourself, but if you were to just sit down, what do you lean to?
I lean in film. I would generally lean towards action, sci-fi types of stories.
Okay. So similar to your writing?
Similar. Yeah.
Were you always that interested and invested in those type of stories?
Yeah.
I mean, you write big world building stuff.
World building. I love any story that really challenges your imagination.
Yeah, that's cool. I have a really weird question, but I saw in your Wikipedia that you also wrote like game scripts for that. And so I just I was like, what is this? So I Googled it, and you can actually get them on YouTube. You can get them, I guess they were cassettes or something like that.
Well, they originally were cassettes, then they made them CDs. Now they're redoing them. They're actually, this was one of those take an opportunity when it presents itself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a convention. It was just, I was doing a book signing, and I walked past one of these booths, and it was just a small booth in the convention, and they were selling this game called How to Host a Murder. It's a party game in a box. It's a murder mystery game in a box. Yep. And I started speaking to the one person that was there talking about it. They had just done a Star Trek: The Next Generation game.
Okay.
And I said, oh, this is great. I can think of all of these people I want to buy this for already. I think you're going to do really well with this game. And they asked, now, what do you do? And I said, oh, I write young adult novels. And they said, we were thinking of maybe doing a young adult version of the game. And that was it.
Wow.
I gave them, I did a game for them for young adult, how to host a teen mystery.
Okay.
They liked it. They had me do another one. And then after the second one, they said, why don't you write our adult games too? And so I wrote 10 How to Host a Murder and How to Host a Mystery games.
And do they give you beats on that, or like the sort of here's how it goes, or are you literally just starting with like, all right, here's the characters, here's how it.
Well, I had played their games before, and my complaint about the games that I played is that there was no logic in figuring out the murderer.
Okay.
It could have been, by the end of your 4 rounds, it could have been anybody. It was randomly picked. So I remember having the conversation with them is that, by process of elimination, you have to, if you figure it out, you can bring it down to that one person. There's got to be a way to do that. And, and so they said, okay, show us.
Deduction. Have you ever read a mystery novel?
they're like, so this mystery thing, this process of elimination, right? This mysterious concept you have.
They were very good. And
if it's fun, who cares?
And they gave me a lot of leeway. I came up with a lot of different concepts. I mean, there was the 70s game, Saturday Night Cleaver. There was a Shakespearean one, The Maiming of the Shrew. I had so much fun with it.
Oh nice. My gosh. That's cool. It's going to be fun to do too. And like you said, just something
They've
different.
Actually come back to me this year, and they want to redo their games digitally, and they want to do some new ones. And so hopefully I'm going to get a chance to write new ones. It's just a matter of fitting it into my schedule. It's
sure.
Not enough time, more shiny objects to distract me.
Right.
So looking through some of your previous credits on the film side, I saw Double Dragon in there.
That was my first movie that got made.
That was the breakout one?
That was the breakout one. And now it's like a cult classic.
Right?
I will tell people that I wrote Double Dragon, and it's like their eyes go crazy.
I think Aaron and I had that exact exchange.
I know.
Basically, because he's like, so my son really likes this guy. I was like, all right, cool, I'll check him out and all that stuff. And then Aaron comes back and he's like, dude, he wrote Double Dragon. It's like, oh my God, really?
I think if you were alive at that time, it's just, that was a big one.
To be fair, there were 5 writers on it. I was the third of 5 writers. The first 2 writers, they felt that it was written too young. And so they brought me on to make it more YA, to make it a little bit older, a little bit edgier.
Okay.
And after I did that, there was the biggest thing that was out there at that moment was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yeah.
And so they decided, it was originally written for like 11, 12. They had me write it up to like 14, 15. They brought in another pair of writers to write it down to 8 and 9. Because they decided they wanted it younger. They wanted to even go younger than what they started with to catch the Power Ranger crowd.
Yeah,
sure.
So what they did was they kept my story. Los Angeles is submerged, and the gangs have control over the night, and they make sure that there's no crime during the day. So the days are perfect, but the gangs are in charge at night. And so that whole concept and how the characters related was all still my story, but they rewrote everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool though. So you got to see it though.
Yes.
Get made.
I got to walk on the set, which was very odd because all of this stuff is going on. I was already distanced from it because they had other writers, but the set was the set that I described for like the villain's lair. So it's like all of this stuff that I had in my head was now physically in front of me, and I'm just a bystander. It was an odd day.
That is weird.
Was your Jaws moment?
Yes.
Yes, this is your Spielberg. You did it.
Well, there was a Disney movie that I worked on I wrote and actually got to be involved through the entire process, called Pixel Perfect, which was on the Disney Channel, and that was I think my best entertainment industry experience.
Really?
Because I was on the project from beginning to end. I got to do rewrites right there on the set, and it was a very positive set. It was just everybody liked each other, which is very rare for there not to be massive drama on the set.
Right.
It was just a fun place to be.
On a Disney
That's really
film?
cool.
That's great. How did you get into that? Was that a script that you had sold, or did they bring you in for it? Or?
They brought me in. It's always, the producers will read something that you've written. They don't want that, but they like what you've done, so they hire you. So it's the stuff that you write ends up becoming your calling card for other things.
Sure. So what else? What's been really fun that you've worked on the film side? On
the film side, well, I loved working on the adaptation of Game Changer, which I co-wrote with Brian Yorkie. Brian Yorkie, he's a producer, a writer-producer. He was the one who brought 13 Reasons Why to the screen from Netflix, which was very, very successful for them. But even more exciting to me is the fact that he is the creator, the author of my favorite Broadway musical.
Which one?
Next to Normal.
I don't know that one.
I don't know it either.
It won the Pulitzer Prize, and it is not your typical musical. It's about schizophrenia. It's about a family struggling with schizophrenia. It's a serious musical, and it is absolutely brilliant. And having dealt with that within my family, with my son, I was very much connected to that story. Okay. And now I'm getting the chance to write with the guy who wrote that.
Yeah. Wild.
It was pretty incredible. And unfortunately, Netflix had executives move and come and go, and then it sort of got orphaned there. And so it never happened.
Could you take it somewhere else?
Doesn't mean that it won't. It just won't happen there. So there's always, this stuff always keeps coming back.
So when that happens, so now it's out there, right? Like, what's the life cycle on that, or what's the expiration date for something when they've optioned that?
It depends on how many times they re-option it. Unwind was under option for 11 years.
Holy smokes.
And it just kept coming back. They're going to do it as a feature. They hired me to write a script. They wanted to bring a director. The director wanted to bring on their own writer. They're going to do it for TV now. That didn't work. We're going to go somewhere else and do it for TV. It just keeps going and going. Meanwhile, I keep getting the option check, so I can't complain.
Right.
It would be really, really nice to actually see it.
Yeah, that's got to be weird. At some point, there's got to be some sort of like the threshold, like the crossover there of like, okay, I like the money, but now I really just want to see it. Like there's got to be a point there where
that creative fulfillment.
Unwind. Scythe is the one that right now is the closest.
Okay.
Scythe is being developed by Universal. It's been through that whole process. They started it as a movie. They didn't like the script that they got. They hired somebody else to write a script. They hired somebody else to write a script. They weren't excited about it. The executive left. They hired somebody else to write a script. And then they were going to let it go. And then Steven Spielberg said, wait, let me try.
No.
Yeah.
Get out of here, really?
So now Spielberg is producing on a Scythe as a TV series for Peacock.
Oh, my gosh.
But they're still looking for the writer. They're still looking for the showrunner. They're still putting together the package.
Okay.
So now it's just...
Have you written for TV?
Oh, yeah. I will get to write it if it goes to series. If it goes to series, I'll be in the writer's room and I'll be involved. But for the pilot, they need to have a writer that has the chops to be part of the package to sell it.
Okay.
So they're going out to some really big name TV writers. I'm very happy about that. Happy to let them do that. Yeah. And hopefully they will do it. At this point, Peacock is extremely excited about it.
Okay.
I don't even know if I'm allowed to be talking about this. So
just send Aaron a note later if we need to cut it out.
But they're very, very excited about it. But they still have to put together the package and get the whole thing rolling.
Sure.
So I can't count my chickens until that happens.
Well, yeah. I'm sure you're in the business of looking at potential chickens. I feel like you probably your whole life.
They're all potential chickens.
Not counting chickens, literally. Just going, all right, yep, that's an egg. There's another egg. There's another egg.
But it looks pretty good. So that's cool. As much as I'll jinx it.
Man, good luck with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Fingers crossed.
Now they're trying to sell my new book, which is coming out in February.
Okay. What is it?
That is called All Better Now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pandemic story, but not about COVID. It's about the next pandemic.
Oh, great. That's good to look forward to.
Yeah. Well, in a sense, it is, because I wanted to sort of turn the whole idea of a pandemic upside down and then just sort of flip it. So the idea is that once you catch this new coronavirus, which they're calling
You have to be outside.
Crown Royale, because Crown Royale, because it's like the king of all coronaviruses.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get over it, whatever is wrong with your life is better. You no longer have depression, you no longer have anxiety. You feel lifelong contentment, but only if you've recovered from it.
Oh, weird. Okay.
And what's the recovery rate?
Pretty much the same. There's like a 3% mortality rate. It's the same as COVID, but when you recover, you're a happy person for the rest of your life.
So is this like fear of like the vampire virus, or is this like people are having chickenpox parties to pass it around?
Both. Because there are people who have it, who want to spread it. Mm-hmm. And there are people who are afraid of it, who are afraid that there's a hidden cost that they don't know. Sure. But mostly people, or the governments and businesses, are realizing that our society isn't designed for us to be happy. Basically, the economies crumble if we're not miserable. Right. Because who's going to buy all the crap they're trying to sell us if we don't need it anymore?
Right. Yeah.
And so there's a vested interest in making sure that this doesn't spread, and in fact, creating a vaccine against happiness.
Oh. Interesting.
While there are people out there who are actively trying to spread happiness through this virus.
Right. That's
so which side is going to win?
I like the concept. That sounds fun.
It's a good twist.
I had a lot of fun writing it. It's going to be a duology, and but before writing the second book, I'm going to be writing a Scythe prequel, which is what I'm working on now.
Oh, okay.
Just one, or are you going to do like a trilogy of Scythe prequels?
Yeah. The publisher says I should do a trilogy. Right. Well, I don't know if it's going to be a trilogy or not. But
okay.
When you hear the publisher thinks you should do a trilogy, is that like daunting to you, or do you think, well, I'm going to write that much anyway?
Usually they've never. This is the first time they've actually suggested that I write a trilogy instead of a single book.
Okay.
I mean, they like when I write trilogies, but they never push me to do that. But because it's Scythe, and because Scythe has been so successful, they want to get as much mileage out of it as possible, as do I.
Sure.
But at the same time, if I write a trilogy, that means that there's going to be so many other things that I don't get to write. And I have several books that I want to write that I know that if I do the Scythe thing as a trilogy, I won't get to them for 5 or 6 years. So I really have to balance that.
You have any tricks? Like, how are you looking for inspiration? That was a really broad question. So like, we talked to someone a while ago who said he likes to turn on spooky music and get in his car and drive around in the dark at night for long periods of time. I mean, that's just one like concept. Are you picking up ideas just from everyday life? Are you keeping a binder full of these things? Like, do you have a place you go to?
When it comes to ideas, I just jot them down when they come, and they never come at expected times. It's just something that pops in my mind, and I don't know where it came from.
Yeah,
it's not like I'm watching something and I say, "Oh, I have an idea." I can be sitting and doing the dishes, and suddenly I have this idea, and I say, "Oh, wow, this is the next big one!" Like out of nowhere. So I'll go to my computer and I'll write it down. I'll send it to a friend or an assistant and ask them, does this sound like something to you? And based on their response, if they go, "Oh, I don't get it," or they say, "Oh, I can see it," then I know whether or not it's something that I need that I'll keep in my hopper until I have the chance to write it.
So it's all sort of back burner. You're just sort of taking things in, and somewhere deep in the recesses, something's cooking.
Yeah. So it's never so much a shortage of ideas. The ideas are always there. It's choosing which ones to work on and figuring out which ones are the ones that are worth telling. In terms of the inspiration, yes, I create playlists for every single book that I write.
Do you? Yeah, I was looking to see if you had anything public out there. We just talked to a guy who has like his stuff out there.
Okay, so there's one piece of music that always seems to be my go-to piece for science fiction climaxes.
Okay.
For Thunderhead, for basically for any of the big sci-fi stories in recent years. It's from the Tron Legacy soundtrack by Daft Punk.
Sure.
And it's the piece called Flynn Lives.
Okay.
When I'm working on a climax of a science fiction book, I will have that one piece of music on endless repeat for days.
Oh my gosh. Which is where your ADHD is like plugs in. You're like, oh, this is fine.
Yeah.
This is great. Mm-hmm. I can just do this. It's like a superpower. I can listen to this over and over and it does not drive me crazy.
Mm-hmm. I got to give it a listen.
Where that really comes into play is when I listen to Philip Glass.
Okay.
So you guys know Philip Glass. His music is very repetitive and for some reason, that just helps me focus in. And there's other people in the room, they go nuts. But it helps me.
See it.
So you like real synthy music?
I do, yeah. But I also like full orchestra as well. I mean, I listen to a lot of John Williams. The problem with that is that you associate specific movies and specific
Sure.
scenes with his music.
Does it have to be instrumental?
Mostly, yes. It's hard to write with when there's words.
I'm the same way. I have a hard time reading words while I'm listening to music for words. I'm a sort of programmer designer by trade. If I can do that, no problem at all, like with music and all that stuff. But if I'm actually like reading something to read it, can't have words in the background. But
when it comes to inspiration, I travel a lot. And so wherever I go, I try to find the coolest place to write.
Okay.
So like I was invited to speak in Dubai. So I made sure that I spent an entire afternoon that I could go and spend 4 hours at the top of the Burj Khalifa on the 148th floor. No way. They don't let you sit there with a laptop, but they let you stay as long as you want. And I like to write longhand anyway. So I went up with a notebook and just sat in the highest floor in the world for 4 hours writing. And it was like the coolest thing.
Did you scale the top like Tom Cruise? Get there?
I thought about it. They actually have a VR thing where you can do it there.
Oh my God.
But it's just VR. You're not actually outside the building.
Right.
Yeah. Looking down from there, I mean, is it just, can you even see the ground? Like, are you above the clouds?
Well, it's Dubai, so it's like there are no clouds most of the time.
Oh, yeah. True.
But but you can see these buildings beneath you and you realize, oh, that building is 90 stories tall and it is 50 stories beneath you. Oh, so it's pretty incredible.
Wow. As somebody who gets distracted, I would think that would be a lot, like just overwhelming a little bit, you know?
Well, see, here's the thing is I find that when I'm out in public, I hyper-focus.
Oh, okay.
So one of my favorite things to do is to go on cruises to write. And I will go with either other writers. I generally, if I'm going with family, I don't write. If I'm going with just friends, I won't write. But if I'm going with other writers, we'll just hang out together, sit and write. And everything that's going on, you know, the noise, the conga line, everything's going on around us. I'm focused in on the writing. Yeah. That's like my happy place.
Is that an organized thing that I don't know about, like as a counterculture thing? Or are you going like as a book tour cruise? Or what is that? You just have
go on my own and invite other writers and say, hey, you want to come with me? I'm going I'm going to be on this ship on this date. Come join me. Oh, and sometimes I get takers and sometimes I don't. And either way, it's fine because I'm getting the writing done.
That's cool.
Love it. So of those places, like what's your favorite type of place to go? Or what is your favorite place you have been to sit and write other than the Burj Khalifa?
Mm-hmm. My favorite place that I've been was when I went to the Vatican. And I went in with, I always have my notebook with me, my handwritten notebook that I write in.
The Pope's room?
In the Vatican, the last thing they take you to is the Sistine Chapel.
Yeah.
You can do the tour and it's incredible. And then they dump you at the Sistine Chapel as the last stop before they push you out. And they say you must walk through quickly. You can't linger. You can't stay. There's a lot of, because there's so many people coming through. But there are also benches in there where you can sit down. And so I thought, how long can I sit in the Sistine Chapel and write and not get thrown out?
Yeah, right. What was the time limit?
I sat there all day. Nobody bothered me. Sitting in the Sistine Chapel, looking up at the greatest work of art created by the hand of man. And I'm sitting there writing. And that had to be like the coolest moment ever.
That is awesome.
What were you writing?
I was working on Challenger Deep.
Okay.
I know because I have a picture. You're not supposed to take pictures in the Sistine Chapel. Yeah. But I held up my notebook and took a picture of the ceiling with my notebook in it.
Nice.
And so you could see I'm actually there with my notebook writing Challenger Deep.
You're definitely on a list somewhere. Somebody's like, that guy. Sorry, you've been marked.
Right. Not allowed back in.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's so cool though.
So I love the travel aspect of it. When you're not writing, what are you doing when you're traveling? This is going to be a big question later, by the way, because we want to know about where you're from and what you do there.
Okay. So when I'm traveling, I mean, I try to go to as many places as I can, especially since the pandemic. I decided that I want to explore the world. Yeah. So one of the things that I do is I pick a place that I want to go. Mm-hmm. And then I contact the international schools there and say, hey, would you like me to come visit?
Oh, man, that's great.
Oh, what a great way to do it.
And lots of times they say yes. And so they pay my way and I get the chance to speak to their students. And usually they'll take me on tours to places. And these are people who live there. So it's not like getting on a bus tour or something. They'll take me to places that are meaningful to them. And so this past year, I was in Singapore. I was in Taiwan. I went to Korea. I was in Seoul. I just got back from Beijing and Shanghai.
Oh my God.
And later this year, next year in May, I'm going to be spending all of May in going around Australia and New Zealand as part of a book festival.
Oh
These
my
are
God, that's
all
so
of my
great.
top places I want to hit, especially Singapore, to go eat a bunch of food in the street.
Yeah, Singapore was great.
My family and I were going to Europe for the first time in June. We're going to be in Italy, and we're not Rome. We're going to Florence, Milan, and then Switzerland.
Oh, yeah. I guess I'll check the mail for my invite.
Yes. Yes. I'll send it out. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Yes.
We digress.
So you've got this book coming out, All Better Now. What else are you working on beyond that?
I'm working on the third and final book of the Noah Files series, which is a mid-grade series. So it's for slightly younger, sort of middle school, late elementary kids. And each of those books is a song title with an animal in the title, because the main character takes on the defense mechanisms of all the creatures on Earth. So the first one is I Am the Walrus.
Okay.
Second one, which came out this year, is Shock the Monkey.
Yes.
Love it.
It's Peter Gabriel.
And the concluding book that I'm working on now with Eric Elfman, my co-author on it, is The Dog Days Are Over.
Oh, nice. Very cool.
So do your musical taste range all over the place too, outside of scores?
Yeah. I mean, I love progressive rock. There's a lot of stuff that's coming out now that I like. Spotify seems to be finding lots of songs and lots of groups that I've never heard of before, but I like.
Yeah. Ken and I are both, we like to keep our finger on the pulse and send each other new stuff all the time. So I never understand when people say, oh, there's no good music now.
It's just hard to find.
I will say I did look you up on Spotify though, and I found, so there's like Scythe stuff on there that I was like, oh, this is cool. It's German. I think it's somebody like reading the book in German.
The book's been translated into all these languages I can't read. Some languages I didn't know existed. It's kind of fun.
Right. I saw that. I was like, oh, this is cool. What is he putting? Oh, no, wait a second. I don't know what that's.
I found out that I'm really big in Bulgaria. I had no idea.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
I was invited to Poland, and I spoke at the Warsaw Book Festival. My signing line went on for 5 hours.
Oh my gosh.
It was one of the biggest crowds I've ever had.
It's like the biggest ego boost you've ever had.
No idea that I had this Polish following. And so it's really exciting to go to a new place and they already know you. And it's fun.
That's wild. But then you can still like get on the bus. You can still like, get a cab and stuff.
Yeah.
It's gotta be great to have that sort of like, what did Chris Ballou call it? Famish. Where it's like, you can go in certain circles and people who know you are, they're like, oh my gosh, that's an important person. He's cool.
Yeah. And you can get your fix of your ego boost by going to those places.
Yes.
And then the rest of the time you just, some schmo on the street.
Right. You can still walk in Walmart. Right. You can do what you want.
The best one I heard of that was there was an interview with Billie Eilish and what's his name? Phineas a while ago.
Phineas, yep.
Yeah. And they were saying like, is that hard for you? Saying she takes the spotlight and you don't really get any credit. He's like, no, I can go shopping.
Yep.
What have you read in the past year or two that you just caught and thought, oh my God, like I wish I could make something like that, or I wish I had thought of that?
The last thing that I read that I really loved was actually outside of the general genres that I read. It was a book called The Wager. It's The Wager was a ship back in the 1700s that tried to navigate Cape Horn. Cape Horn is South Africa.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the other one. Yep. It's the Terra del Fuego. It's the
Africa or
South America. And they became shipwrecked. And the story is from all the documentation of all the characters involved, the mutiny that happened. And it was so fascinating. I mean, I read cover to cover. That was one of the best reads I read.
Is it like historical fiction, or is it like an actual like?
It's kind of. It's nonfiction, but it's almost, but it feels more like a novel. It's the same author that wrote Killers of the Flower Moon, David Graham.
Oh.
And it was just really spectacular.
What about movies or TV shows?
Well, Black Mirror. Keep waiting for the next season of Black Mirror.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Never come fast enough. And you keep saying that you're going to just watch one a day to stretch it out.
Yeah. 3 hours later, you're done.
You don't do that.
It's funny because my wife loves them too, but she's also one that's like, they certain ones strike a certain chord, and she's like, "Yep, I'm done." That's good.
Well, yeah, the first one,
I feel terrible.
People out.
Dude,
the whole pig thing. The
pig thing. I never. So that was probably the 5th or 6th episode that we saw because we have friends that were like, "Oh my God, you got to watch this. It's great." check out this one. This one's a good thing. And he had actually put it in an order that he was like, this is the good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back, and then we had other friends. I was like, oh my God, you got to check it out. And they watched it like, what the, like, this is the worst show ever. This is terrible. What are you talking about? I was like, oh, no. I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And then I went and watched that, and I was like, oh, geez, no, that's a terrible
place to start. Yeah.
And that's probably, as you're talking about getting a writer for a pilot, you know, making sure the pilot is really, really good because it makes a difference, you know. But yeah, Black Mirror is fantastic. But there
another show
ones
that I've been watching and actually been sort of really bonding with my youngest daughter over this. You know, my youngest daughter, she's 26 now, but she's very much into anime. You know, she's an artist, and we've been watching Arcane.
I've read a lot about it.
It's a new thing.
It is, I think, the best animated series I've ever seen.
Really?
Oh.
It really is. It works on so many levels. It's like if you watch it again, you'll see more in it. It's just really well written. It's beautifully animated and incredibly well written.
Okay, I gotta give it a chance. I love these kind of recommendations.
Yeah, totally, absolutely.
All right, so that we don't keep you all day. I mean, I have a million more questions, but I feel like we should drive this somewhere. We always want to know about where people came from and what that did to help influence them. So you have like 3 different homes. Well, maybe even more.
There's an even longer story.
Yeah.
It's where I came from and where I thought I came from.
I mean, we've got the time. I'm just trying to be respectful of yours.
So I came from Brooklyn. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. Was there till I was 16. Then we moved to Mexico City, my junior and senior year of high school, as I mentioned before.
Yeah.
And then spent the rest of my adult life in California until moving to Jacksonville 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
This only child, Jewish family. My father had this big curly hair in the 70s. He had a really big curly hair. He had the Jew fro. He had that,
nice.
And I looked just like him. My grandfather on my mother's side, my maternal grandfather, had Sephardic roots. He was often mistaken for being black, especially in the summer because he got very dark. My parents always told me I took after him. Last summer, I'm going on one of my writing cruises.
Okay.
This was one where I was just on my own. And as the ship is leaving the port, I get a text from Jared, my son Jared. And the text is, who the hell are these people?
What?
And he gives me a link to his ancestry.com.
Oh, it's not where I thought that was going.
So I click on his link. On his mother's side are family names that we recognize.
Uh-huh.
On my side, all of these people that we have no idea who they are.
Okay. All right.
So now the ship is pulled out of port. I have to buy the expensive cruise Wi-Fi. So
Oh God. Yeah.
I'm sitting there on Wi-Fi with him trying to figure this out. And we find one of the names, and one of the names is a guy by the name of Martin Ingham who lives up in Maine. He lives rural Maine.
Okay.
And he has a blog.
Oh my gosh.
So we click on his blog and we see his picture. My God, he looks like my son Brendan.
Okay.
Whoa.
I feel like, by the way, that's a good metaphor for so then the ship left port. I feel like it's a good metaphor for where this was going.
Right.
You can't make this up.
The ship is now adrift.
Literally, the ship is adrift. I'm alone on the ship where I know nobody, adrift in the ocean. So this guy looks like my son Brendan, and we start reading his blog. And he has a lot of genealogy stuff in his blog. And then we find a blog 2 years back that he had written 2 years ago, talking about something that his mom once told him. That his mom told him that out of the blue one day before she died, that she had a baby when she was 16 and gave it up for adoption.
Wow.
And the year that happened was the year that I was born.
Interesting.
And according to Ancestry.com, this guy is my half brother.
Wow.
Get out of here.
So I contact my cousin, my eldest cousin, who knows all the family business.
Okay.
And I tell her about this, and I ask her, what's going on? And I texted her, so there's 3 dots, 3 dots,
I was gonna say,
half an hour.
Did you...
And then she writes back, dearest Neal.
Oh, God.
Oh, no. Oh, God.
And then I knew. So she says, yes, you were adopted, but your parents swore the entire family to secret for your entire life.
Wow.
What?
I'm 60 years old, and I'm just finding out that I was adopted, and everybody in my family knew. All my cousins, even my younger cousins, all my aunts and uncles, everybody knew.
Oh my God.
How do you cope with that? How do you figure that out? I mean, I guess, you're a little bit relaxed on a cruise. It's probably a decent place. You can't track people down and yell at them.
I did not get any writing done on that cruise.
Yeah.
I just basically, it was just kind of wandering around. I was disoriented.
Like a shock, right? You're like a little
shocked,
bit.
It wasn't bad. It was just just odd. It was surreal.
It was so weird.
Yeah. It was like, I felt like I kept thinking back to the Truman Show.
Sure.
I think I'd just woken up into a world that I didn't know, where everybody knew a secret that I didn't know. What am I going to do with this?
Yeah.
And also, my paternal half is a black family, so I'm half black.
Oh my gosh!
But suddenly I'm half black. Suddenly I'm BIPOC, and I had no idea.
When did this take place?
Last August, a year ago, August.
Oh wow!
Oh my God!
So now, not only dealing with not being who I thought I was, I also find out that I'm also something else, which was fine.
Right.
A lot of people have already thought that I was black. People would mistake me for being black, and I would politely correct them and say, no, I'm just Jewish. I have Sephardic roots. No, that's a lie. That's bullshit. I'm actually half black.
Wow. So your father's Jufro, as you called it, just happened to sort of work for what
it was. I looked like the family.
That's crazy.
I could show you my bar mitzvah pictures. I look like my mom. I look like my dad.
Oh my gosh.
Because it annoys me when people would come up to me and say, oh, well, it was obvious. How could you not know?
Oh, get out of here.
No, look at the pictures of me growing up with my family. I look like them.
Wow.
Also, how would you know? Right?
Yeah.
Right. Why would
How do you just make this random connection?
Especially if everything sort of at face value appears to connect for you. Like, why would I be looking for that?
So did you connect?
Yes. I connected with, first one I connected with was Martin, because he had his blog, and so I was able to get in touch with him.
Uh-huh.
He lives in rural Maine, very different lifestyle from me.
Yeah.
Nicest guy. He has 4 kids, just like me. And here's the kicker: he's a published science fiction author.
Oh, get out!
No. Yeah. If you needed something else, the clincher there.
Yeah.
Right.
While this was all going on, I was in touch with my publisher, letting them know, just telling them, you got to hear this thing that's happening with me. Mm-hmm. And then I gave him some of Martin's stuff to read, and he says, he's a good writer. And I said, why don't you let us write a book together? I'll write a book with my long lost half brother.
Right.
And we sold a book. So now we're writing a book together.
No shit.
Wild.
Oh my gosh. And he's a good writer.
He's a good writer.
That's amazing.
So it's going really well. When I was on tour in April, I got to go up to Maine, and so I spent a couple of days with him and his family. And then on the other side of the family, I met my half sister Tasha, and there's 4 siblings there. There's 3 sisters and one brother. So I've met Tasha. I'm going to be meeting the rest of them. But this is a family that is embracing me on both sides that I never knew existed.
That is wild.
And it is wonderful.
That is the best possible outcome and ending. Like, if you were writing a show, I would think that's a little schmaltzy.
Yeah.
That's true. I don't buy it. That is so cool. And especially, I don't know, you reach a certain age, you're like, okay, all the surprises are gone.
Yeah.
Well, did you know?
It was exciting to find something new about
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
that I could explore and have fun with.
That is wild. So the rest of your family had not met them, though, right? Like, your family didn't know that other family. It's not like all your cousins are like, oh yeah, we go to Maine all the time, and we go.
No. There was no connection. It was a complete stranger adoption.
Yeah. Wow.
What we were able to figure out, because Martin only had part of the story. So I was able to get a little more of the story from the other side, and then figuring things out. One of the things that Martin had told me was that the grandmother, my maternal grandmother, biologically, was her and her mother and his mother were very strict about when they had that baby. They wanted that baby given away for adoption at birth, and that nobody in the family see it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, one of those. Okay.
And the reason why was because my biological mother knew that the father was black.
Right. Sure.
And it wasn't her boyfriend. She had a boyfriend, and she knew that the baby was not hers. It was from a relationship she had with a black jazz musician who was, it's an 18-year-old black jazz kid.
Oh my goodness.
So they knew that the baby was going to be black. They just didn't know how black. They didn't.
Right.
They didn't want the boyfriend to know that it wasn't his.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So the stipulation was that the baby be given away from adoption at birth, nobody see it, and it would be handed to the adoptive parents in the next room.
Wow.
Which is exactly what my adoptive parents wanted. They wanted to adopt me from birth.
Just right from there. And apparently, hey, you got best of both worlds, I guess, in that sense where, you got good adoptive parents, I'm assuming as well. So
yeah, hell of a decision to make.
I had a great family. It just all worked out.
That is wild.
But I had no idea. But now putting it all together, it all kind of makes sense. And the creativity, my parents were, my mother was very much into art. She actually worked for a big international artist. But in terms of the creativity, my biological father was a jazz musician.
Jazz musician, sure. Yeah.
My biological grandfather on the other side was a trombone player who played with Miles Davis. And my biological grandmother was the Mother Abbess on Broadway in The Sound of Music.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
You've got some good roots.
It's just all of this stuff coming at me it's been really exciting.
How'd your kids take this?
They took it really well.
Yeah.
I mean, Jared was the one who was, sleuthing the whole thing with me and figuring it all out. And after he did, he said, I need about a month away from this to just swallow this and digest it.
Yeah, sure.
And then Brendan's response, my oldest son's response was, I can't wait till I tell all my black friends that I'm my daughters all said, well, our friends always said you were a black guy anyway.
Right. That's great.
And then Jared ultimately came back and he said, so does that mean that we're a diverse family now? Are we BIPOC? Can we do that?
Yeah. How can we milk this?
What angle can we approach this?
When can I work that?
That's him. So
that's great.
Which is a good question.
Sure.
Biologically I am, but culturally I'm not. So where does that fall?
True.
And it's a whole question of identity. What does identity mean? And the whole idea that our identities are fictions that we tell ourselves.
Sure,
I mean, we take the bits and pieces of who we are, and we assign importance to these various different bits and pieces, and we say this is what defines us. And yes, those things are true, but they are part of a larger whole. We are choosing to give importance to certain things.
Yeah.
And so in a sense, it's a narrative. We've taken all the things that are who we are, and we've created a narrative about ourselves that we cling to, and it defines our lives. It defines who we associate with. It defines who we love. It defines the music we listen to. It defines everything.
Sure.
And yet it's all a narrative that we've created.
Yeah. Well, it's also how it defines, how you act and ultimately who you attract.
Yeah.
Who loves you, what people you bring into your circle and all that, it's part
and
of
yet
it.
It's all a narrative, which is exciting to me because it means fiction is really the most important thing we have as human beings.
Yeah. The story that you have.
That is the wildest story. I mean, I feel like you should put that on paper.
Everybody has said that, and I'm trying to figure out how to do that. Whether I want to do a graphic novel, whether or not I just want to write it as a novel. Do I want to write it as a memoir? There's so many different ways to approach it, but I'm definitely going to do it. But I just don't.
A graphic novel would be really interesting. You don't seem like the memoir type, straightforward storyteller.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. It will be something.
Cool.
So and no one will believe it. They'll think it's just made up.
I know.
Right.
So who was this about, really?
So Aaron and I were talking about, from the home that you had, let's say, the home that you were brought up in, or actually not even necessarily where you were brought up. I mean, it could just be, I don't know, like for you now, if you were to say, I'm from, would you say California? Or would you say New York? Or would you say, if you had to pick one, what would you?
I kind of cop out and say I feel like a citizen of the world.
Okay.
I feel comfortable anywhere.
Well, ultimately, here's the question, because maybe this will narrow it down.
Anchor it, a little bit.
Yeah. Ken and I like to ask, we're coming in to visit for a day, and you're the tour guide. We want the authentic tour, activities, food, drink, music, whatever there is to do. You're going to show us around your home. Where is that going to be that you want to show a tourist around?
How many flights do I get to make in this tour?
Yeah, right. I was going to add a stipulation there. Right.
My instinct would be New York, except New York isn't really home anymore. Like New York is where is a place that I love to go the most to just visit and hang out.
I love Brooklyn, but today's Brooklyn has to be a very different Brooklyn than what you grew up in.
The Brooklyn that I grew up in was a Brooklyn that everybody wanted to leave. Now, now it's the place everybody wants to go. So it's a very different Brooklyn. Southern California, but I left Southern California because I got tired of it. I still consider it home in a sense that my favorite restaurants are still there. I still have, a lot of friends that are there. 3 of my 4 kids are there at this point.
Okay.
Where in Southern California? What part?
In Orange County.
Okay.
In the Mission Viejo, Laguna Hills area.
Okay. It's nice.
Where I still have a home there. My son Jared's living there now, and so I get to go back several times a year. I'll spend a few weeks visiting several times a year. But most of my time is spent traveling and here in Jacksonville. The place that I'm in now, I don't know if you can see, I am on the
it's kind of hard to see out the window. I think you can see there's a scrim there,
I am on the 33rd floor.
Oh wow. There you go.
Of this building, and I have this 270 degree view of the clouds and the storms coming in, and I just love being here. This is a place where I feel energy coming back to me.
Okay.
So I just love being here, and this is the first place I felt where home didn't feel stressful.
Okay.
Because like in Southern California, there's always so many things to do. The house always needs so much work. I'm always overwhelmed by something when I'm there.
Sure.
Yeah.
But this is a place where I don't feel overwhelmed. And so I would say this has come to feel like home to me.
So where are you going out then? So let's say for Jacksonville, let's say we were to pop in. Where do you eat? What do you like to do during the day when you're not writing? Where are you going?
There's a couple of great sushi places that I love to go to. There's a hot pot place. I like a lot of Asian food.
Me too.
There's an Indian place that I would take you to.
What's the Indian place? You can name names.
Thai place that I go to.
Yeah.
We go down to the beach, walk along the beach. There's a couple of really great bookstores.
Like what? So name some names. Just so
Chamblin's is a great bookstore that has all of these used books. It's floors and floors of used books, and it's almost like a movie set with all of these used books. I'll go there and just randomly pick a book off the shelf and just sit there and start reading, and having no idea what I picked up.
That's great.
And it's always fun.
And again, because you're like fame-ish, you can do that. You can just go and sit there and read, and you're like that guy's a very well accomplished author sitting right there reading a book, just a random used book in the bookstore.
There are times when I've walked into a bookstore and I walked into someone who is holding one of my books.
Nuh-uh.
Really?
Is your picture on there?
Some of them.
Okay.
But then I would go up to them and say, "I wrote that. You want me to sign it for you?" It's just a weird thing. What are the chances that you're going to be in the bookstore and happen to run into the author of the book you're holding?
I would think it was a setup. This is like I'm on Dateline.
Slim to none. I try it all the time, and it doesn't work out.
They're like, Aaron, if you could just leave, that'd be great. You've been hanging around too long.
That doesn't happen that often, but when it does happen, it's kind of fun.
That's exciting.
What about Indian food? What's your favorite Indian place down there? Do you have like a go-to, a single?
There is my favorite Indian place, and I have to remember the name of it. It's on my Grubhub order place. I can't remember the name of it. I think it's called Minerva.
Minerva.
Okay.
I think so.
Do you know the names of the sushi or Thai places or the hot pot?
Well, Sake House.
Okay.
Right across the street from my building here.
Convenient.
It's a great place. I'm waiting for them to bring my favorite restaurant in. They have a lot of really good restaurants here. My favorite restaurant is actually in Southern California. There's a few of them, but it's called Din Tai Fung.
Okay.
And it is a dumpling dim sum place.
You're speaking my language.
It's amazing. And they don't take reservations. You have to show up, get in line, and then you have to wait for 2 hours. This restaurant in the malls that it's in, it's always in malls, it has become the anchor store of those malls.
Oh my gosh.
Because people will show up and then hang at the mall for 2 hours waiting to get in.
And everyone knows.
And everybody knows. Yeah, and there's no time you can go there where there isn't a 2 hour wait.
Wow, my God. Wow.
Are they planning on bringing them to the East Coast? Or is this
I know
California?
They have one in New York now.
Oh, okay.
I have friends in Chicago who are incredibly jealous because when they travel, they're other authors. And so they're always, Candace Fleming and Eric Roman, and they travel a lot. And so they're always eating at Din Tai Fungs everywhere else. They're like, they've been to the one in Tokyo, and they've been to the one in Dubai, and they've been to the one in
oh my gosh,
in various places. But
how's this place so global? And I've never even heard of it.
I know.
Well, we live in Baltimore. That's why.
True. I was just in New York not too long ago. I'm sure we'll be there again soon. Are you a drinker?
Not really.
No.
No.
So that's off the table.
And unlike a lot of authors, when
it's not very authorly of you.
I can't write. It does not spur my creativity. I don't know how it does for some people, but it doesn't for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you read those stories about Hemingway drinking like 12 daiquiris a day. It's just how do you do anything?
Yeah, exactly.
Let alone think. I don't know. Do you go to music? Do you go to shows? Do you?
Down here, I haven't had the chance to do all. I mean, I'll go to movies, but I go. I Tuesdays and Thursdays when I'm in town, I actually have a board game group that I go to.
Cool. Aaron and I kind of more connected over music and board games, basically.
It's true. We for a long time had a standing Thursday night board game night.
Oh,
with our local.
So you know it. So yeah, so you're
sure.
So you do that too. Okay, so it's not just me. I'm not the weird.
No. That's great. The fact that you can do Tuesdays and Thursdays, good for you. What's a good game you've played recently, or anything that stuck out?
Oh, well, I always play the go-to game, especially when I have relatives visiting, is Splendor.
Mm-hmm. Yep, my wife and I play a lot of Splendor.
That got my daughter and I through COVID, was playing Splendor and Ticket to Ride.
Oh yeah,
yes,
definitely.
Very familiar.
Actually, my computer is stationed here on my very professional stand of two of the games that I've been playing.
There you go. Yeah,
that's awesome. Towns and what's the third one? Alhambra.
Oh, okay, cool. The Tiny Towns. Did I see Tiny Towns on there too?
Yeah.
It's the bottom one. Yeah, there you go.
It's a good one. Dumb name. It's hard to get people to play it because that is a stupid name, but it's a good game.
That's cool.
That should be a new question that we ask. What is under your computer?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. If you had asked me yesterday as I was getting set up during the day, I had my daughter's algebra books propped up under there to kind of do that. So.
Nice. Well, I'm jealous of your travel schedule. It sounds like you like that.
I do. It just gets to be a little bit too much. I mean, after I got back from China and Japan this time, I actually had gotten sick. And so I've been down for most of the month of November. Something weird that I caught there. But, it's, every once in a while, your body tells you, slow down. It's enough. Take a break.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I canceled stuff in December. I'm going to be minimizing my tour in the fall. I'm going to be doing a lot of virtual stops.
Okay.
And I'm going to take it easy through February. And then pretty much in March, I'm going to start hitting the road again and getting back out there.
Good for you. You ever get up this way?
I do. I was actually supposed to come to DC as part of the tour. But since we're going virtual now, I won't be going. But every place that I was going to go on the tour this time is automatically on the tour next time, which will be in the fall. So I'll definitely be there in the fall.
Stay in touch. Cool. Maybe we can grab some dim sum up here.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Spots in DC. Well, this was a delight. You were a fun guy.
Yeah.
That really story, I'm still blown away by your ancestry story.
That is wild.
Yeah. And thank you. I mean, keep writing. I hope
welcome.
All this stuff.
It's been great chatting with you guys, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, I hope we see Scythe on the screen at some point.
Yes, seriously. And hopefully Game Changer gets out of whatever development.
Hopefully.
Yeah, definitely.
Very cool, man. Well, take care.
Thanks. Yep. Enjoy your evening. Take care, Neal.